I'm going to say that I got to coach a pretty exceptional team, and I'm going to get out of the way because they did all the work. So guys, take it away.
All right, thanks, Mark. I'll just share my screen really quick. Can everyone see this? Yeah, okay, great. So hi everyone, my name is Brady, and I'm part of the Code Plus 2021 Blue Devil chatbot team. Our team is made up of 3 different sub-teams for our 3 stakeholders. So we cover Duke HR, Duke Registrar, and the Duke OIT. And of course, we have our team leads, Mark and Isabel. And next, I'll pass it off to Emily to talk about our goals.
So across the 3 different sub-teams, we ultimately had the same goal for our chatbots of the chatbot addressing the consumer's question before an employee has to. And we explored Microsoft and IBM artificial intelligence technology to build these chatbots. I'll pass it back to Brady.
Thanks, Emily. So how does the chatbot actually work? Well, the chatbot uses software to automatically communicate with users and uses patterns that it has in order to develop better responses over time. It uses NLP, which is natural language processing, which allows the bot to understand and communicate in human language. It analyzes intents and entities, and intents are essentially the purpose of a question, while the entities are more of the diction behind a question. And it implements data over time to improve its responses. And finally, one of the more advanced features of a chatbot that our group has been able to implement is multi-turn conversation. And this is when a bot will ask a follow-up question in order to get a more specific response. And we'll see these later in our demos. Next, Mitchell, about IBM.
Thanks, Brady. Yeah, so looking at the IBM framework more specifically, it will detect the user's intent from whatever they say and look for entities, which are special keywords for the bot. And after the user says something, the bot will evaluate each of its dialogue nodes and deliver a response based on what it's picking up. So if, for example, the user says, I want to order food, and we have 3 different intents we can check for. Set timer is false, order food is true, so we get this response, and check weather is also false. And now I'll pass it off to Edna to talk about Microsoft.
So the Microsoft Azure Bot works in a similar way with a combination of Q&A maker and language understanding. Language understanding is also called LUIS. It will extract the intents and entities from users' inquiries, and then the Q&A maker will use that information to find an answer from its knowledge base. And now I will pass it off to Jackie to.
I don't want to waste your time. Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, so basically we tried out both IBM Watson and Microsoft Azure, and we found that IBM makes it easier to integrate external services, such as enabling a webhook. Its intents and entities can also be found in one place, which made the overall building process easier to navigate. And basically, we also, probably most significantly, we found that its NLP technology made it easier to respond and understand our users. But maintaining and updating the dialogue can take quite a bit of time, especially if you're not familiar with the service. And while Microsoft makes it easier to update and offers more customization features, its deployment process and additional services rely on other Microsoft services, which usually didn't have organized documentation. So in the end, both the team and our stakeholders decided that IBM Watson was the better option. And next, moving on to talk about each of our stakeholders, Mitchell and I worked with the Registrar's office. And essentially our goal was to create a bot that handles a high volume and variety of questions, provides a personalized user experience that can answer time and student-specific questions, such as when is my registration window, and offers friendly and engaging customer service 24 hours a day. So next, Mitchell, do you want to talk about where we're at?
Sure thing. So yeah, where we're at with the Registrar bot, we have wrapped up our user and stakeholder testing after a couple rounds. And now users kind of have a way to leave feedback with our chatbot, like kind of a was this helpful question. And yeah, and our chatbot is also able to write to a database. So moving forward with this project, we did a lot of pricing and cost analysis, and our stakeholders are great and they want us to move into production. So we wrote the documentation to transfer the bot ownership over to them and have them get going. And now I'll pass it off to Ayub to talk about the OIT bot.
Alrighty, thank you, Mitchell. So yeah, and then I worked with the Office of Information Technology. And essentially, if you guys don't really know what the OIT does, you usually go there whenever you're having any trouble with your applications, or system assistance with Duke Technology. So essentially, they currently have a live chat option where you could talk to a face-to-face, or not face-to-face, but you could talk to an employee. But due to COVID and some staff shortages, it's been kind of hard to continue maintaining that service. So essentially, we wanted to kind of alleviate some of that stress by creating a chatbot that will be able to solve everyday questions at a much faster rate. And now I'll pass it over to Edna, who will tell us a little bit more about where we're at and our final steps.
Yeah, so for the OIT chatbot, now we have completed multiple rounds of user testing with stakeholders and IT analysts, and we've got really positive feedback from them. And we've also addressed the accessibility issue by putting a chat launcher at the top corner so it can be captured by the screen reader. And another thing we found out is that around 7% of the live chat transcript contains things that should be directed to the DHTS service desk. So our chatbot handles that without letting human staff do it. And the next up, we're going to move into production, and we are working on a documentation for people to continue to update the chatbot. And next, Brady and Emily will tell you more about the HR bot.
Thanks, Edna. So Emily and I worked with the human resources chatbot, and the human resource is essentially a hub for all employees of Duke to find what they need. And our goals for this project were really to answer a variety of user questions in a very simple and efficient way where the user feels really comfortable using it. And we want to provide 24/7 support for all of our users. And ultimately, our final goal is to really answer more of the routine questions with our chatbot so the HR staff can handle more of the difficult questions when asked. Emily?
So as for the current status of the chatbot, we have implemented Watson Discovery Search in our chatbot, and Watson Discovery is a service that searches through a knowledge base, such as a website, for answers if the intent being asked is not already specifically programmed into the chatbot, and I'll go into that more in the following slides. Additionally, we have added new intents and rephrased questions due to user testing. And as for final steps, we also are working on documentation for the transfer of the bot. And we want to link the SQL database we have and a chatbot by the questions answered and the questions asked and the intents provided. And we are in the process of discussing whether this chatbot will be moving forward into production with the HR department. So to go into Watson Discovery a little more and how that works, basically you feed the service data in the form of private data, which could be in a JSON file, a PDF, etc. Or you can use this feature that's fairly new on the service, which we use specifically for this project, which is a web crawl. So you can give it a website and the service will go through all the information in the website, and that moves it into the ingestion stage where the Watson Discovery will convert and enrich all the data that is found in that website, and then the user of the service has a chance to clean and normalize the fields, which essentially means that as a user you help Watson Discovery identify whether what is the text or the body of a file, or what is the header, what does the title look like, and this is all just so the service can understand what it's looking at a little more. And you have to do this 49 times before the discovery service begins to use the results of the training. And next is the storage stage. So Watson Discovery will index all that information and put it into a collection where it can then be queried, and you can use a search query through the Watson Discovery service. So then we infuse this service with the Watson Assistant in order to provide a backup in case the exact intent or question was not already programmed in the chatbot. Watson Discovery will kick in and it will search through the knowledge base, which is in this case is a website, and will provide the correct link or answer to what the user is asking. So next, I attached a screenshot here of what Watson Discovery would look like in a chatbot. So here the user says, what is Duke well? And this is an intent that was not specifically programmed into a chatbot already, but the chatbots can still answer the question because it will say here, I searched my knowledge base and found this information which might be useful, and Discovery will provide 3 links that could potentially be useful for the user. And here you can see the second link seems to provide the correct answer. So the user can still walk away with the correct answer from the chatbot. Next, we'll be showing a prototype of the HR information centered chatbot. So this is what it would look like on the website. And here the user is going to type in, how long do I receive Duke long-term disability payments? So the user is going to type that in, and the chatbot will ask another question, asking what is the age you became disabled. So this is an example of the multi-turn conversations we were discussing before. So asking another question to further specify and provide a more precise answer. So next, the user types in, how much do I receive under Duke long-term disability? Once again, the chatbot asks for more specification, whether you're total disability or partial disability, and based on that answer, the chatbot provides the more specific answer for the user. Next, I will be showing the OIT chatbot demo.
Alrighty. So essentially, with the OIT chatbot, there's two main ways the chatbot could receive user input, either in the form of very broad generic terms or questions, or very more direct or specific questions. So as a result, we adjusted the bot to handle both situations, and we'll see both of those in action now. So let's say if you type in, I have a question about Zoom. Essentially, we provide you guys with a few possibilities of questions. So in this case, we click on co-host a meeting in Zoom, and we give you a response. And at the very end, we also have a link if you want even more information. And essentially, that's kind of how the first way of the chatbot interacting with the user could work. But secondly, let's see if we were to give a more specific question. In this case, we say, can I ask someone to schedule a meeting and set me as host? So as a result, we do the same exact thing. But now at this time, you see a more, this is like a direct response to the question you had in mind. At the very end, if you ever need more assistance, we always direct you to the live chat or to the OIT phone number. And that's essentially how the OIT chatbot works. Now I'll pass it over to Mitchell, who'll tell us a little bit more about kind of like the infrastructure behind everything.
Thanks, Ayub. Yeah, kind of a behind the scenes look at our chatbot. When the user interacts with the chatbot interface, so the user will trigger the correct dialog node, which calls a bot webhook, and that passes all the information over to an IBM Cloud Function, which meshes really nicely with the chatbot interface. The IBM Cloud Function passes this object through Nginx, which provides a secure server for our Flask app. So now that Flask has this object, it can write all the information in it after parsing it to the MySQL database. And it's important to note that Nginx, Flask, and MySQL are all run in separate Docker containers that we orchestrate through Docker Compose. Brady, take it away.
Thanks, Mitchell. So we've actually gotten to the point in our project where we're starting to analyze the cost benefits of actually implementing our bot onto these different websites. So some of the metrics that we used were how quickly our bot was able to respond to each user, if the user's experience using the bot was actually better, and how much we could increase the HR, OIT, or registrar's staff experience through using the bot. And the process we used was estimating the approximate bot capabilities and trying to use that to estimate the time saved for the staff of each of these departments and the total cost of the bot support. One example is the OIT Service Desk live chat. So we collected about 8,000 live chats over 2 months, and we analyzed each of these transcripts to estimate our bot coverage. And one of the things we actually immediately realized is we could send approximately 7% to DHTS, which is Duke Health Technology Services. And we added, of course, the intents and entities that we didn't know based off this data to our chatbots to continually improve them. As far as the cost for our chatbot, we were given information about site visits per month by the Registrar, OIT, and HR. So Registrar is about 43,000, OIT is about 100,000, and HR is about 147,000. And for each of them, we estimated the percent of bot users based off other information from other chatbots. And for the Registrar and HR, we have 15% approximately. But for the OIT, because they already have the live chat, we estimate about 1%. And that would give us about 6,000 for Registrar, OIT is 1,000, HR is about 22,000. And in order to calculate this, we looked at the Watson Assistant Plus plan, which is about $140 a month for 1,000 active users and $14 a month per 100 additional active users. And an active user in this case is defined by like a user's unique ID on the internet. So if the user doesn't clear their cookies and they go on a website multiple times, it still counts them as one user. And then of course we have to account for the Flask web server cost, which keeps track of all of the information and questions in order for us to analyze them and better our bot. And all of this combined for Registrar costing about $950 per month. OIT is $180, and HR is about $3,000 per month. Next, Jacqueline will talk more about where we're at.
Yeah, so essentially across all three stakeholders, we're automating routine questions, which will alleviate staff and allow them to dedicate more time towards complicated questions. And we're doing all this while improving the chatbot on an ongoing basis. And next is to talk about a little bit about what we learned. We were introduced and got to work with a lot of interesting technologies, most of which we listed here, such as Docker, Nginx, Docker Compose, and MySQL, etc. And we were able to really practice and familiarize ourselves with more common tools such as Linux and Git. And so, yeah, next, we just wanted to give a really big thank you to each of our stakeholders, which without them, there would be no chatbot or chatbot team. And we also wanted to give a big thank you to our IBM sponsors who gave us lots of great advice and were really supportive throughout the project. So yeah, thank you again for listening. And we can now take any questions.
Thank you. I see applause. Yeah, open it up for questions. I know one of your IBM sponsors, I think, is on the line, so I'd love to hear from James.
If not, yeah, well, one of the questions we actually thought that some people may want to ask us is actually what is the most difficult part of your project, and how did you end up dealing with that? And maybe Mitchell, do you want to try to take that one?
Sure. Yeah. With this project, first of all, in kind of a hybrid format, I mean, it's tough to kind of communicate and work as a team, but I'm really proud of us. I think we did a really nice job communicating, and our stand-ups were great. So that definitely presents a challenge. And then kind of like Jacqueline was saying, just being exposed to all these technologies that we've kind of never even heard of probably before Code Plus, and now kind of feeling confident in using them. I definitely feel like we overcame that challenge as a team.
Awesome. Does anyone else want to talk about some challenges maybe? Jackie?
Yeah, I think having so much oversight over the project itself was a bit of a challenge, having to coordinate our meetings with our stakeholders, and making being responsible for making those big decisions was also a really new and fun experience as well. So that was for me.
Awesome. It looks like, okay. Tracy, and then we can read the question in the chat.
Sure. Yeah, I was just going to ask, you talked about your constituents really wanting to turn this into production right away. I wonder what your thoughts are about how projects like this one that have great applicability to Duke's operations move from being a student-led and run project into something that's more sustainable. Do you have thoughts about that, or how you scale it in terms of the questions and answers or its efficacy?
Yeah, of course. So one of the things you might have actually seen in our presentation is a documentation that we created for our stakeholders. And that's really the point of that, is for transition from us into our stakeholders and improving the bot over time. We made the documentation so it's easy for them to access and navigate our chatbots and to continually improve them. And so that's just one of the ways that we're trying to, kind of bridge the HR with our current students. Does anyone else have anything?
I can also add on to that. So just in general, a chatbot, just due to the nature of what it is, will always be a work in progress. There's always people who are going to ask new questions or things in ways that we haven't thought of before. So when we pass it over to stakeholders, there's somewhat of an expectation that, this is not something that we're just going to leave at what it is, and it will still be continuously improved when it's in the hands of our stakeholders, just because that's what needs to be done for a chatbot, really, if you want it to keep being dynamic and keep being relevant to the website.
Paula?
I was just going to say how impressed I was because we only had a few test sessions with the students, and they listened so well with the feedback that we gave them. And I knew, I mean, you came back and all the times, every bit of the feedback we gave you, like you had addressed it. It's not like you just zeroed in on one piece and came back and you gave us multiple options and kind of gave us some advice for yourself about how you think it would work with the chatbot. I just wanted to say thanks. I just think you guys did an amazing job.
Thank you, Paula, for being an amazing stakeholder.
Okay, it looks like we have some questions in the chat as well. So first from Mark Olson, did this project change your experience of interacting with chatbots in other contexts? Do you want to try to take that one?
Yeah, so I guess there's like two types of people from my experience at least. One that love chatbots, they think it's a very quick way of getting an answer, and it seems kind of cool to use, right? But then there's the other side where it's more, oh, this is a hassle, or like they're not going to understand how, or like basically the chatbot won't understand what I'm trying to what I'm trying to solve. So I think us working behind the scenes of creating our own chatbot really just gave me a new insight as to like kind of the amount of work that you have to put in into creating it, and kind of all the different things you have to take into consideration. Because kind of like what Emily was saying, like a chatbot at the end of the day, it never, or you could try reaching that stage where it's like a final end product, but no matter what, you're always going to continue updating it, continue working on it. So essentially, this just gave me a new kind of respect and understanding of how they work behind the scenes. Does anyone else want to add into that?
Yeah, I can add into that a little bit. Yeah, so one of the things our IBM sponsors actually sent us some websites of other websites that have chatbots implemented, and we got to play around with those a little. And I think like I've seen chatbots on other websites too. And originally I was really like, whenever it wouldn't work, I'd be like, dude, this thing like is bad. I don't really like it. I don't know how they can't get this to work well. But for ours, we went through a lot of rounds of user testing, a lot of different things, and we realized like it is very hard to cover everything that a person could ask and the different ways they actually even ask one question. And so I feel like that was one of the things that I realized, and I feel like I've had a greater appreciation for chatbots elsewhere as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to
okay.
add on to that, I think something that I've noticed or been a little more critical of when I've been looking at other chatbots is the idea of it just kind of hitting a wall and then you can't do anything with that. So I feel like in our chatbots, we kind of focus on implementing, whether it's thinking of how to transfer to a live agent or just like having a phone number there in case the chatbot doesn't work. Just the idea that you don't waste your time completely if the chatbot doesn't work the way it's supposed to, just because I've looked at other websites and then, you type in something it doesn't recognize, it says, I don't understand, and that's it. And you can't really move on from there. So that's something I've noticed in other websites.